This story revolves around a teenage guy who spent his entire existence conditioning his physique to overcome any dangerous situation that comes his way. Regardless of his extensive lifelong training, he believes that his efforts are futile against a nuclear strike, rendering him powerless. However, the craving for dominance transforms his determination into an all-encompassing force of desire to have the ability to control everything from the shadows that eventually leads him to his demise. Before we begin, follow if you want to zap into the latest anime trends and hit the subscribe button so you never miss any update from us. Nishino is awakened by an alarm that prompts her to get ready for school. As she opens the door to leave, she is reminded of hungry reporters lurking outside to get the scoop, which momentarily takes her breath away. However, she quickly gains her composure when her chauffeur calls to her and enters the car. It is evident that she comes from a wealthy family. Unbeknownst to them, a van is also monitoring their movement. Nishino's arrival at school attracts attention from her school. She puts on a fake smile and greets a boy she despises because he is distant and inconsiderate towards her in class. During lunch, while alone in the bathroom, Nishino thinks back to the scandal that made her take a break from show business, leading her to hide behind a mask. On one occasion, Nishino stays back for makeup lessons. Coincidentally, Kagenou was also asked to remain in school to tally up the answers for a school survey. At night, Nishino finishes her lesson and calls her chauffeur, but he's unable to pick up because he's been ambushed by the people in the suspicious van. She decides to walk home alone, but she is a little on edge as it's her first time walking home since the incident. As she continues her journey, Nishino is blocked by the chauffeur's attackers and kidnapped just as she passes out. She wakes up bound and gagged in an abandoned building. The kidnappers alert her to be a good girl and sit tight as a ransom note has been sent to her dad. The criminals begin to argue, and Kagenou uses his phone screen as a mirror to get a glimpse of the situation inside. Kagenou drops down from the building skylight as the stylish ruffian slayer saves Nishino from the kidnappers. He subdues the kidnappers and frees Nishino before disappearing. Her dad makes successful efforts to prevent the incident from becoming public knowledge, and the following day, Nishino goes to school as if nothing happened. She meets Kagenou at the building entrance, and for the first time, he gets her name right. She also notices that he's more present, and it makes her finally see that he too was living his life behind a mask. That night, Kagenou has a maniac episode before finding himself in front of a truck running him over. While in limbo, he reviews his life up to that point, where he dedicated his life to martial arts to be strong but wanted to be a background character with the ultimate goal of being the hero mastermind in the shadows. Upon awakening in a new world full of magical energy, the protagonist, who takes on the name Sid and is born into an aristocratic family with a long lineage of dark knights, finds himself overshadowed by his talented older sister, Claire. Sid struggles with his Dark Knight training, hoping to remain in the background until he unexpectedly displays his incredible power by defeating bandits with a slime sword. During his search for plunder, he discovers a cursed entity which he later reverses, resulting in the transformation of a hideous blob into a young elf girl. Sid sees this as an opportunity to create his shadow persona, so he recruits the elf girl, who he names Alpha, to join his organization, Shadow Garden. 3 years later, with Claire now set to attend the Midgar Academy for Dark Knights, she is kidnapped by assailants, leading Sid and his Shadow Garden to uncover the truth behind her abduction and defeat the kidnappers. During their rescue mission, Sid and his team face off against Viscount Grease, who had taken a strange pill to increase his power. After Sid, now in his shadow form, defeats Grease, Claire returns home with her injuries healed, and the 7 shadows of Shadow Garden inform Sid that it is time for them to leave him. Sid, at the age of 15, is currently a student at Midgar Academy, where he lives a life as an unremarkable background character. Along with his other background character friends, Hiro and Imo, he travels to school on the train every day, considered a lower-ranked noble by the school hierarchy. However, only the elite honor students, such as Sid's sister, are granted permission to reside on campus, while students like Sid and his friends must commute daily. Despite this, Sid remains content with his life and the companionship of his close-knit background of a group. Sid has been at the school for 7 months and is content with his life until his friend reminds him of a bet they made. As Sid had struggled with his recent test scores, he finds himself in a precarious position where he has abided by the penalty to confess his feelings to Princess Alexia, a notoriously unapproachable figure when it comes to suitors. To his surprise, Alexia accepts his confession and even invites him to join a royal fencing class with her. But things take a complicated turn when Sid discovers that Alexia's true intention for dating him is to rebel against her upcoming arranged marriage to the fencing instructor, Mr. Zenon. Initially reluctant, Sid eventually agrees to continue the charade of dating Alexia, accepting a gold coin as a token of her appreciation. However, their relationship is short-lived as they have a heated disagreement about fencing, which ultimately leads to a breakup. The following day, Alexia is reported missing and Sid becomes the prime suspect in her disappearance. Princess Alexia wakes up restrained in a bed with magical chains, in a dungeon cell deep beneath the city. As she surveys her surroundings, she is startled by the sound of chains rattling and notices a monster in the corner. The mad scientist who has kidnapped her enters and reveals his plan to use her royal blood to resurrect a demon. Meanwhile, Sid is being physically interrogated by the Night Order, who suspect him of being involved in the princess's disappearance. Back in the dungeon, the mad scientist begins to abuse the monster, but the princess intervenes. She is force-fed to replenish the blood that has been taken from her. Instructor Zenon reports to Alexia's sister, Iris, about their investigation of Alexia's disappearance. After 5 days of interrogation, Sid is released on Iris's command, but she tasks the men to continuously survey him. He meets with his subordinate, Alpha, to discuss their investigation of the cult of Diablos. Sid transforms his room to fit his eminence and shadow persona, receives the services of another subordinate Beta, and prepares for the Shadow Garden's attack on the enemy's hideout to save the princess. During the attack, the mad scientist injects Alexia's blood into the monster, which shockingly enough, kills him and frees the princess. The demon then escapes, and Alexia encounters Zenon, who reveals that he is the one who kidnapped her and the one who sponsored the mad scientist. He reveals that he needed her blood to get the top 12 highest ranks in the Night Order. She attacks him but is no match for him. Shadow arrives to rescue her with a simple yet effective entrance. Zenon confirms that Shadow fits the description of the culprit who has been causing trouble for their cult by attacking their smaller facilities. He proceeds to insult Shadow for his actions and warns him that he is now the prey being hunted because a core member of the cult is present. Zenon happens to be that core member, and he lunges forward with a powerful attack. However, Shadow quickly dodges and shields the princess from harm. Meanwhile, a colossal monster is rampaging through the city, and the knights' attempts to subdue it prove ineffective. Iris rushes to the scene and directs her troops to evacuate the injured before engaging in battle with the monster. Though she lands a deep cut on the creature, it regenerates, prompting Iris to change tactics and slice it into tiny pieces. Suddenly, Alpha appears and destroys the corruption around the monster, revealing that it is actually Viscount Grease's daughter. She takes the girl with her and disappears into thin air, leaving behind a puzzled and stunned Iris. As Zenon and Shadow's battle rages on, Alexia observes with rapt attention, marveling at Shadow's transcendental technique despite his limited fencing skills. She admires his ability to outmaneuver a high-level opponent with the fundamentals. In a desperate move to gain the upper hand, Zenon resorts to using magical steroids to boost his performance. However, Shadow effortlessly overpowers him and scolds him for relying on temporary enhancements to compensate for his lack of skill. With a hint of arrogance in his voice, Shadow discloses that he had developed his unique technique with the intention of surviving a nuclear bomb, thereby dubbing himself the Nuke. Zenon attempts to launch an assault, but his sword shatters upon contact with Shadow's weapon. In a swift motion, Shadow unleashes his formidable attack, causing the entire district to crumble and reducing everything in its path to ruins to an unimaginable radius. Alexia is deeply moved and inspired by Shadow's prowess, while Iris mobilizes her trusted knights to delve into the possible links between Shadow Garden and the notorious cult of Diablos. Meanwhile, Sid, who is none other than Shadow himself, firmly declines Alexia's request for a date and becomes brutally assaulted by her. Later, he bumps into a researcher named Sherry, and as he extends his hand to help her up, a brief moment of connection is shared between them. The following night, tragedy struck as the Shadow Garden impersonators carry out another attack, claiming responsibility for killing an innocent civilian. The incident reinforces the fears and suspicions about the group's growing influence and the need for swift action. The next day at school, Sid's friends gather around him during lunch to console him about his recent breakup with Princess Alexia. Despite the tragic events, they can't resist teasing him about not taking things further with Princess Alexia. Hyero presents the idea of checking out a recently inaugurated retail store in town to procure chocolates for their crushes, as the shop boasts an eclectic selection of uncommon items that intrigue Sid. Meanwhile, the two princesses convene with Sherry, a brilliant mind renowned for her intelligence, and her father for a meeting. Iris persuades Sherry to help the capital and asks for her expertise in deciphering an artifact they found in the cult's hideout. Concerned for her safety, Iris assigns the highly skilled Crimson Order to protect her. Meanwhile, Sid and his friends arrive at the new retail store, and after being selected to participate in a survey, Sid is escorted to the rooftop by a store attendant. Upon reaching the rooftop, Sid is surprised to find Gamma, who reveals that she has built the store based on Shadow's stories of his past life. Gamma shows him the enormous profits the store is making and also warns him that a group is using Shadow Garden's name to commit murder. Sid begins to suspect that Alexia may be involved in the impersonations. Later, Sid saves Alexia from the Shadow Garden impersonators, and this confirms the princess's innocence. While all this is happening, the impersonators gather to report to a shadowy figure, strategizing how to retrieve a missing item. Princess Alexia updates her sister on recent events, but she sees both the Shadow Garden and the Diablo's cult as their foes. On their train ride to school, Sid's embarrassing bathroom mishap has already circulated among the students, and his friends' attempts to woo their crushes with chocolates have proven futile. As he witnesses his friends' failed attempts to impress their crushes, Sid takes pity on them and decides to take a different approach. He impulsively offers his chocolates to the next girl he encounters, which happens to be Sherry. Curious about the gift, Sherry brings the chocolates home and stares at them while conducting research on the artifact. Her father notices her fascination with the chocolates and advises her to explore her interests outside of her research pursuits, reminding her that life should be enjoyed as well.